It's exactly 9:30, and we have a full half hour for in-depth discussion with Malcolm about the themes that he's introduced. The mic I've got, I'll use as a roving mic. For people in the room, if you have a question, put your hands up. And are there any questions in the chat room on the Zoom?
No questions as yet.
Okay.
But if anyone on the...
All right, you'll let me know.
I'm scanning.
Yeah, no problem. Okay, questions. Who's got a question? Yep.
Hello. So, I'm not sure so much this is a question, it's more of an inquiry, I think, and it's around time. And so, I have a 3-year-old, and my wife's pregnant, and that makes me very emotional on this topic, because I thought for a long time about whether or not I should have a child. And I thought we had more time, to be honest. And it seems like that time is rapidly diminishing. And that led me to think about the 5 dimensions and adding a 6th of time, or the fact that they all live in a 6th dimension of time. And I should probably introduce myself as well. My name is Mike, and I was very fortunate to have been a part of a training that Malcolm was also very instrumental in Gestalt psychotherapy, a life-changing training. And it's led me here, actually. I moved to Totnes last week, so I'm very new here. Thank you. So my inquiry really is around what to do with the time that we've got, and knowing that we're in an extraordinary time. And I don't know if it's a given that the future for me or my children is going to be stable. I mean, I guess in a sense it never was stable, but it seems to be increasingly unstable. So I think for me the question is around how to act intelligently in this time, in this moment, to improve the chances of answering your question, the question you asked at the beginning, like, is humanity able to continue to evolve? And facing that question with bravery to say, well, what if the answer is no?
Well, in a sense, it's the most fundamental existential question facing all of us. And I do think that in a sense everybody's got to answer it in terms of their own lives. What I suppose the way I answer it for myself is that whatever the future holds, if we're still alive, we are confronted with the issue of how do we live. And the way that I want to live is actually encapsulated in these 5 dimensions. And that's not surprising because, in a sense, I formulated them, although it wasn't just a personal choice. It was something that grew out of and has been confirmed that it speaks to people. It's an approach, or I don't like calling it a model, but it's an approach or an inquiry process that makes sense to a lot of people. It's simple enough for people to get it in a short session, at least to get something of it. And yet it also is something that can be taken to any depth of understanding. And it seems that the people who get it are often wanting to go on with it and to take it deeper and to use it as a framework. And you and I know a number of people who are in that category. Mike is a research fellow in the Whole Intelligence Research Fellowship. It's got about 8 or 9 people in it. And everyone's doing different things. And it serves as a kind of general framework of understanding. And I think that I know that if there's only 10 minutes left of my life or 10 years, it's a framework which I want for myself, because it falls really between 2 great domains, one which is political and the other is spiritual. I haven't specifically talked about that, but in a way, going deeply into any of these dimensions, you encounter the fundamental spiritual questions which all humanity has. Sorry, I'm not sure I'm answering your question, but...
Okay, I've got a follow-up question, which is, can you say something more about what you think the connection is between whole intelligence and the spiritual as normally understood?
Well, I think in the broadest sense of spiritual, there is a fundamental mystery. What are we here? What are we here to do? What are we here for? Why are we here? How did we come about to be the people we are? And those questions take one into a contemplative realm, an inquiry mode, which the formal religions of the world attempt to provide answers. And some of them are incredible answers, and very profound, and very heart-based. And some spiritual activities seem to close down the spirit of inquiry and become fundamentalist or doctrine-based, rather than staying with the mystery, staying with these fundamental questions about our existence and our life, and how come that, if you like, we were put into a particular place. I wanted to talk today about lots of other things, including the work of Bill Plotkin, that some of you may know, strongly recommended. And afterwards I'll give you the reference if you need it. But he talks about the fact that each of us has an eco-niche, that just somehow our lives, as different as they are, has some kind of meaning or purpose that is unique to ourselves, comes from the fact that our lives have all been fashioned and formed from our genetic and epigenetic backgrounds, and as a result of being exposed to the cultural forces and the essential issues around love, death, morality, legality, which bring you into issues that we touched on in terms of familiarity and breaking of patterns, but also the necessity for some kind of structures and guidance and thoughtfulness in particular directions. These are the major religions have all provided guidelines, and most of them involve the interrelating function of caring for humanity, for other people, for the state of the human community. And we are in the extraordinary position of needing to have a global identity. We can't afford to lapse into nationalist and sectarian divisions. We can see the effects of that. They lead to war and to the loss of so much. And I suppose my own life began in war, and if you like, the call of peace and avoidance of the destructive effects of war has been a part of where I've gone, and it has taken me into spiritual questions. But it's a huge question.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm Trevor Griffiths. I founded an emotional literacy training charity called the Emotional Logic Centre, which is all about adaptability, about how we can understand our emotions in a way that can help people to adjust to change. And what I've really liked about the presentation here, and I want to pick up, it's Mark, isn't it, you said? Yeah. About the context of this in relation to, how do we survive in a rapidly changing world? The answer that I found a lot of people are coming up with is we need to be joining into small groups, small trust groups, where we are really known, where people can hear each other and be heard, and groups of maybe 8 or 12 people, that sort of size. And the problem with groups is there tends to be a leader, and that they can veer off. So one group might go down, say, embodying, let's go down the bodybuilding route, or whatever. But the idea of these 5 areas to develop a whole intelligence in the group, so that the group develops a whole intelligence, I found was beginning to register for me. Within this, whatever is sort of talked about, people can make sure they're balancing between all these 5 areas. So I was wondering whether you, having written about this, whether you are actually promoting small group development, or if you're aware of any ventures that are going on like this, because I think this could be a good way of keeping groups focused into the right balancing way, rather than going off in one extreme or another.
I'm not sure I've got a neat answer to that. I mean, there are lots and lots of attempts and things that I've started or been involved in, which have been ongoing groups for either for hours or days or hours, So yes is the answer to that, but whether it would fit your particular notion of an ongoing group, I'm not sure. But what you've raised is the fact that I think almost the most useful practical application of this approach is in the form of a kind of checklist. So that coming to an end of a meeting, say, committee meeting, it's always good, I find, to run through the checklist. Did we respond to the situation? There was this crisis that involved, somebody breaking a boundary or something. Did we deal with it, or did we avoid dealing with it? In which case, we did not respond to the situation that was called for, that asked us to step up and take responsibility. Or, and if we didn't, what was going on? Were we interrelating? Well, yeah, we were getting on all right, but we weren't going very deeply into our self-recognizing. We weren't communicating from a deep, embodied place. So, that would mean that we couldn't really do much. It was a so-so, humdrum, ongoing sort of thing. So what was needed? Well, it was needed was somebody to confront people, to say, come on, we're not getting on with the job. So then you get into whether that breaks the habitus, if you like, that's existing, which is an invitation to experiment, to go beyond the familiar, to do something we've never done before as a committee. We've got to do that. So it's like the notion of a checklist is hugely important and applicable, and that is spreading as something as a practical outcome. But I'm really interested in your own work, because it sounds quite compatible. So let's be sure to build on that.
Malcolm, I want to ask you about your reading of experimentation. One of the good things that I noted when you were answering that question was that you said you hadn't got a neat answer. Thank God for that. Because it seems to me that experimentation asks people to come to things with a more open mind, that you don't immediately start to form a group or try and organize a focused approach. Surely experimentation is about being open to whatever comes your way, a more freeing up of your thinking rather than to try and give it some kind of fix.
I completely agree. I mean, it's like they merge into one another, they interact. So what you're talking about is responding to the situation. Sometimes doing something experimental would be not acting intelligently, not creatively or whatever, and sometimes it's exactly what's needed. But you can't specify in advance, oh, you need to experiment. You have to find the time, the subtlety, the contactfulness, and the totality of the field. So are people, in fact, in good enough connection with each other to be able to support an experiment? Are they embodied enough to recognize when they feel uneasy about what's being proposed? That's data, and we need more data, bodily data, and our thinking process, and our knowledge, our history, what we know about ourselves, what we know about the group of people we're with. We have to take in a holistic view, and we live, unfortunately, in a period of history where reductionism is the dominant mode. It's like to split things up, to categorize, to classify, and so on. And it's very, in McGilchrist's terms, it's very left hemisphere. It's very dominated by the need for order, structure, clarity, predictability, and so on. It's back to Aristotle. It's the episteme knowledge rather than the more flexible and more difficult to capture and pin down phronesis. But that's what we need. So I'm with you, I think. I hope. Anybody else?
Thank you, Malcolm. There's something that comes up as you're speaking that that I've noticed in myself, and in I think it's something we don't necessarily talk about very much, and it's the word ambivalence.
Ambivalence.
Ambivalence. And I suppose as you were speaking this evening, just now, you know, we're asking questions, that was a question that came to me. It's quite a... I don't like to put this on everyone, but I think we do have, as a human race, and I notice in myself, a degree of ambivalence, and how you would perhaps look at that from a Gestalt point of view.
I would take it that it's an entirely normal and honest kind of recognition of self, is that we're drawn to certain things and we're repelled by certain things, and sometimes we can oscillate between them as to which we, in a sense, want to identify with and take into ourselves and be part of our self-concept or understanding. And I'm often ambivalent about things and holding the tension. My own solution is to take time to allow some kind of deeper truth to arise, but always to give full notice of both sides of the argument, if you like, or both yearnings. And I do a lot of fundamental Gestalt work around moving between chairs, between positions. So if I feel ambivalent about, do I want to go to a particular party? And I wander around and think, oh God, do I really want to go? Or, oh yes, I would like to go. Well, I don't want to go to more parties, and so on and so forth. To go round in circles. And the way out of that is for me to just have two chairs. I'm going to the party, I'm not going to the party. And sit in one, and then sit in the other. Sit in one, sit in the other. And usually, within a few minutes, the answer's clear to me.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we've still got a bit of time. So, as nobody has a question, I'll ask another question, which has to do with the way I hear you. You know, you're talking about a kind of methodology.
Say it again.
You're talking about a kind of methodology.
Methodology, yeah.
Yeah. And it's kind of a system of thought. And the question I want to ask is, where do you think all that's going? It's a little bit like I'm reminded of Jung and his 4 dimensions. You know, the thinking, feeling, intuiting, sensing, and so on. And he had a very specific idea about how balanced development on those 4 dimensions would manifest in terms of where it would take you, in terms of, you know, the individuation process and becoming in deeper contact with yourself. And I was just wondering whether you have any sense of that with this particular system.
No. It's a long time since I've sort of read and thought about specifically Jung, but yes, it is something that is a system of thought, if you like, a way of thinking, a way of being in the world, a way of construing life and existence. And it may or may not appeal to other people. I'm not sure I can know that. I mean, I'm doing my best to communicate these ideas. I get enough feedback from people that it's something that of value to them, that I keep on doing it. But I don't want to go the way of a sort of narcissistic agenda that this is the only way. I mean, there are countless other isms and ways of being that people articulate. And I think it's actually one of the things that's rather encouraging about in the great area of huge change that we're going through at the present time, that there is a surfeit of approaches. There is in Tonnes, in terms of the things that you can do and people believing that they've got the answer, or they want everybody to come on their particular ship. And a bit of me would like more people to be involved in this, because it seems to it's creative, it's generative for me, and certainly for a number of other people that I know. But I don't want to be on a sort of narcissistic, grandiose trip. I want the ideas and the practices, the thoughts, to stand on their own, whether they make sense to people. Because I haven't got long to go. I mean, I'm 84 this year, and I'm not looking for immortality. I'm looking for conversation, an inquiry, an interest.
Thanks, Malcolm. Any other? Have to be a very quick question if there is another question. Yep. Has to be a quick one.
Malcolm, perhaps I shouldn't follow up on this question, I don't know. Myers-Briggs personality types, very complicated, but according to this system, there are particular configurations of qualities that individuals have, like intuition, perception, intellect, and so on. And according to this particular configuration that any individual has, they have a predisposition to engage in circumstances in a particular way. And with that will go a particular kind of intelligence. Now, if people have, it's a big if, have these different personality types with predispositions and peculiar types of intelligence there, not all of them are compatible. You can't just throw them all together and it'll work out. And you can't just put some people in one role which is not appropriate for their personality type. So how would the issue of whole intelligence relate to Myers-Briggs personality types? Probably too big a question, but it just came up.
Well, it's similar to the question about Jung in a way. It's like my sense is that these domains that I've been exploring have an essential utility. They're not. It's not a personality thing. It's like the people with different kind of personality types and may have problems around interrelating together because of their differences, but that's still a problem that has to be dealt with. We can't. The quality of the exchanges may be linked to personality types, but it's still a case that people need to be able to get on, and particularly to collaborate and deal with differences. And there's a great area that I haven't gone into tonight, but about how, but it's something I'm particularly interested in, is what can we say about how do we communicate across differences. You know, when we meet people who've got fundamentally different viewpoints, this is absolutely critical to living collectively more intelligently, because for exactly that reason, that people have very different views, and we are constantly having to deal with the consequences of that at every level of system. So, and some of these will be mapped by the system you're talking about, others by the Jungian. There are hundreds of maps, but this function is still has to be dealt with. So it's not contradictory to that. I mean, that would be a really interesting aspect of looking at the need for people to deal with their relational issues if they don't collaborate or can't collaborate. And we have to overcome the multitude of silos and smaller systems that can't talk to the others. And I'm delighted when people make connections to other systems and we begin to build something that's more integrative between them. And it's endless work, endless possibilities, necessary, as we obviously know.
With those endless possibilities, we will have to leave it for this evening. Thank you very much, Malcolm. And thank you for attending, and I wish you a safe journey home. And Consciousness Cafe is now officially closed. Good night.